Hey, and welcome. We just looked at the VLOOKUP function. We're going to look at the index and the match functions that in this case can do the same thing as the VLOOKUP. So I'm going to do so in a direct comparison here. We ended here with the VLOOKUP, having done VLOOKUP, using the VLOOKUP to look up in our table. I'm now going to look up in this table these things with the help of index match. So I'm going to start by just using just using the name, and then we'll finish off the table. So index match is two functions, index and match. It can do the same as VLOOKUP, which is what I'm about to show, but because it uses two functions in one, that gives you more flexibility to use them, and a bit more sort of ability to personalize it or make a few adjustments in the way you want to do things. So that's why some people prefer to use index match. It's more versatile. So the match function, what does it do? Well, it finds where in a table we find our lookup values. So if we see here, we start with a lookup value. Again, we'll look up the item ID just like last time. We need a lookup array where we are looking for this value. Here, we'll use it. We'll use the column where we're looking at. So already we see that there's a bit of diversity compared to VLOOKUP. We can choose ourselves which column to look up. So VLOOKUP, it chooses the leftmost. Here, we can choose if we want to look up here or elsewhere. Again, when we come to our table, we usually want to always look up in the same place, so we can lock this by adding the dollar signs. And now we have match type. Match type is either -1, 0, or 1. Depends on if you're looking up values, exact values, or values close to it. VLOOKUP has a similar function, but match has either in descending or ascending order, so you're are able to look up greater values, lesser values, and it just has more flexibility there. In our case, however, with the VLOOKUP, we used false. We were looking up an exact value. Here as well, we're going to use 0 to look up exact values. And that's often the case with, with these kind of IDs and that kind of stuff. We want to look up exactly this. So we don't need to worry about 1 and -1. We don't need to, just like we didn't worry about true in VLOOKUP, we're only using 0 and false exact matches. And what do we get here? We get these values. And what are these values? That this is where we find the item ID in our list. 1, 5, 3, and 2. What does this mean? It means the item ID 1 we find in row number 1 here. The item ID 5 we find in row number 5 in our array, which looked like this. It was 5 rows. Now, obviously, this is just going to be the same number as this because it is arranged in order. But if we change the order like that, we now see that it's no longer that the 5 becomes a 5, but it's where that 5 actually is. In this case, in row 2, we find our 5. So it returns a 2 there. So we see that it doesn't have to be in exact order. Now, so now we see where we get it. We get where it finds our exact match. So now we can use the index function to index this out. So what does the index function do? Well, we either do an array or a reference. We're going to do the array. So it looks in a table. So let's choose the whole table here. And we'll lock it. And they're saying there's a row number. So in this table, this whole table, we need to pick a row. And which row number is this? Well, that's the row number we found with match, right? We found in what row, or so what row number this was found in 1. So we just well, we don't need Let's add that. What said there was just database exclamation mark, which is the sheet reference. But because this function is in this sheet, we don't need it. It's just a bit of cluttering. And then the column number is where do we get the answer. So now that we're looking in this row, row 1, where do we get our answer? Where do we get our name? That's in column 2, right? If this is the first column, column 1, here in column 2. So I'm just going to write 2 there. And this, if we want, we can lock it. Although I'm not going to do that right now. We could lock it to column J, but we'll leave it like this. And then we get the names here. And we see that these are the same as we got with our VLOOKUP function. So, okay. Can we do this in one step? Yes, we can. So I'm just going to pick these and do them in one step. So we can do the match first if we want. So you use the match function. We look up the item ID. Where do we look it up? We look it up here. And we can lock that. So I get the $signs. And we look for exact match 0. Okay. So I've now put that in. We're looking up this value, which we can lock as well to that column, column C. Where in our table? There, and we're always going to look there, so we can lock that table, and we're always looking for exact match, so 0. Then we're going to take an index, and we need an array. So I'm just going to add here. If you prefer, you can do that. We can do this in a box here. So we get like this, and now we have the match function in here in row 2. An array, where are we looking? We're looking here in this table. And we lock it again. And what returns here, that's the row number, and column number was 2. So we get big blasters. Now we just put all that in 1. Okay. And I can pull this down. We'll get the same as before. And I can pull this over and just change this from, instead of returning 2, we return 3 was for the type. And here 4 was for the price. So I can take those down. This will be the same as these ones. And the revenue, of course, is just price multiplied by the amount. So here we see I've done the same table as here, but with index and match instead of VLOOKUP. And what are the benefits? Well, again, we saw that one of the benefits was that we don't have to have what we look up be in the leftmost column. We can choose that ourselves in the match function right here. And there's also some flexibility here in if we're looking out for exact matches. We don't need to worry about that, but it's good to know. And then we can use the index in a similar way to find it. So we see that the index function does the looking up in the table once we know the row. So the main benefit is thus, if we have something that looks like this, now we're going to have a problem with here. I mean, we get problems with all of these because we've changed things around. Let's see here. Oh, we're C5 to C9. That's because these are different. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it like that. So we see here. Okay, so it gets changed when we make that cut. Let's just keep it here. But let's do it so it's B5 to E9. That's where it is. So we'll just do that. B5 to E9. And we see that these don't work anymore. None of these work. They're no longer happy, even if we change that to 3 and this to 4. This didn't need to change. they're no longer happy because it's not the leftmost column. We're using this one now. But this one will still be happy. We need to change it though. So it was B to E. And what are we matching? We're still matching in column C. So we're just doing that change. And we can put these over here. For type, we're returning, let's see, what are we returning here? For name, that was, the name is here is in the first column, so we change this to a 1. And the type would be in the third column and the price in the fourth one. So type is in third. And the price is in the fourth column. And we see we can still work it. And I need to pull this down. There we go. So we see that this still works, even though where looking things up is in the middle, this one does not. Now, it's not a problem if we can switch these around. But if you have a big database, you might not always want to do that. You might not have the ability to do that because that may change a lot of other things, and that's annoying. Index match does the job. So we now have both of these two functions. We can use both of them. Oftentimes the VLOOKUP will help you and will take you most of the way, if not all the way. But the index match will work in every scenario, although it's a bit more of things to add in.